Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Bang on 2 o'clock. As always, we're just going to give it a minute or two before we get started on the webinar, just to let a few more people join. So yeah, see you in a minute or so. Right, good afternoon, everyone. We're just about there, I think, on numbers, so I'm sure the last few people will come through and join. But just welcome to today's webinar. As part of our Sizewell C Supply Chain Business Support Program, today's subject is preparing your business and your team for accessing the Sizewell C site. It's part of our suite of support webinars that we've been running over the past year to 18 months. And we obviously encourage continue to sign up for these and continue to view them on our website to be able to look back at the recordings from previous sessions. The whole aim of these is to ensure that we're giving you as much information as we possibly can before you're given the opportunity to work on the Sizewell C project. Just if I go onto the agenda, to introduce myself, first of all, my name is actually Shorey-Mills. I'm the Sizewell C Supply Chain Engagement Director here at the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce. And just as a reminder, the Chamber of Commerce has now been working on the Sizewell C project for circa 13 years. Very much happy that activity is now underway on site. It took a lot of years to get here, a lot of hard work from a lot of people, and our role of helping you as businesses brings you here today and hopefully brings you the information and the opportunities that you will want. Today we're joined by Jackie Mills from Sizewell C, and I'll let her introduce herself properly a little bit later when she runs through her slides. And as always, we encourage lots of conversation and questions today, so we'll have plenty of time for Q&A before the webinar ends. So really the purpose of today is to help you as businesses understand what the process of induction is at Sizewell, and how that whole journey will start for you as a business and the various different steps along that journey between ultimately trying to win work and then fundamentally that first day on site for you and your employees and maybe sometimes the supply chain which you employ. So it's a big subject that we get asked a lot of questions about, hence wanting to hold the webinar today. And just to really reiterate, this is a great opportunity to ask questions of the Workforce and Employment Affairs Unit team and ourselves. So encourage you, pop your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. But also, importantly today, what's really, really good is, we want you to use the chat function today. We want to understand from you what businesses are in the audience. Because a lot of you, it's just saying your names on the invite list. And actually, we want to know the businesses that are showing an interest. But actually, more so as well, don't just put which business you're from. Put, are you already on site? Have you already gone through this induction process? And if you have, let us know that, because I know from myself and us as a chamber, but also Jackie and the wider EAU team at Sizewell are really intrigued to understand the levels and the different types of businesses that are working on the project. So I say, please do make sure, use the Q&A at the bottom, use the chat function, and really engage and talk to us about what's happening. As always, we're recording our webinars, as I said earlier. So by the end of this week, this webinar will be hosted on our website in the support section, along with all the other ones so that you can re-watch them, look over them. And particularly for some of you who are now on the first steps of that journey of hopefully working on Sizewell C, potentially you're not going to be needed for some time actually on the site itself. So being able to review and revisit this webinar could become beneficial. So just as a point regarding us, just as always the reminder of our service and what we're trying to do, we have our 4 key themes. And fundamentally, firstly, it is local. We are here to represent the 6 counties of the East. We want to ensure the biggest benefit out of this project and the biggest legacy possible. And we want that to be through local businesses working on this project and local people working on this project. There is huge amounts of opportunities ahead, and it's all very much for us to help you understand where you fit in, but also to help make that as easy as possible. Hence these webinars, to help you get as prepared as you possibly can, but also to help businesses, understand from each other who wants to work on this project, to help foster that collaboration. We want to see, and we need to see, businesses working together to make success out of Sizewell. And I'm sure through some of the slides Jackie will talk about later, it will really showcase the fact that actually everyone does have to work together to get the best results out of this project. We must see a legacy. What we do not want to see is Sizewell built, but then at the end of it, that nothing else happens from this. There's huge levels of investment coming into Suffolk and the wider region because of Sizewell. We need to build a legacy befitting of that investment, both directly from Sizewell, but also more broadly from the business community and other major stakeholders. So we want to see a more diverse, inclusive, cohesive workplace for all of our types of businesses, from the smallest to the largest. And we want to ensure that then we can take advantage of all these other projects that are coming to the region or that are already underway. But importantly, making sure that it's sustainable and proportionate to what we need. What we don't want is lots and lots of businesses growing very, very fast just for Sizewell, which then puts them at risk, in particular on a large scale project. But then also, once Sizewell has finished construction, that potentially then there isn't as much to manage those large scale businesses. But equally, there is the excitement of the future of other nuclear projects that we want to gear our businesses for. And of course, fundamentally, everything about Sizewell is about the environment. It's about making sure the UK government hits its 2050 net zero agenda. And we want to see businesses in the East lead the way on this, looking at decarbonisation of traditional construction methods, coming up with innovation and showcasing how clever we are in this part of the world to really drive forward Sizewell's ambition of zero carbon energy on the Suffolk coast. And of course, that commitment, fundamentally why are we all here? It's because the Sizewell project itself has committed to 4.4 billion in our region. So across those 6 counties, nearly £4.5 billion to be spent in the east. Now that's a huge opportunity through the supply chain, and that will come from everything from those, selling the sausages, as they say, all the way up to those actually doing the big digs, and laying some of the concrete and getting involved in doing the tunnels out a couple of kilometres out at sea. It's huge opportunities from multiple sectors. And the evidence from Hinckley down in the southwest in Somerset, which is where Sizewell's sister plant is currently under construction and approximately 60% or so of the way through, maybe a bit more now, is that they've recently reported 5.3 billion has already been spent across their region. And so it gives us the confidence to know that actually this opportunity that Sizewell want to spend in this region is real. And it's about how we then take advantage of that. Because it is what they would like to do, but we need the businesses to step up and take advantage. But also, as I mentioned earlier, there is this wider now focus on the nuclear supply chain across the UK, with other large-scale plants being planned, and also the small modular reactors and advanced modular reactors being considered for various places around the UK, which could even include our region. So it's all about how we build a supply chain for Sizewell, but how we build a supply chain for all of the other opportunities in the nuclear or wider energy sector as well. And of course, one of the key ways that all this will be delivered is through social value. Fundamentally, the commitments they've made to local fit within this. The top hexagon that you'll see on that graphic is all about increasing UK content, and that's in the order of local, regional, national. So can locally it be delivered, i.e. can it be delivered in Suffolk? And if it can, then it's a consideration for the project to look at. Then it looks regionally, the other 5 counties of the east, and then it looks nationally. The project wants to achieve 70% UK content, which would be higher than what they've achieved at Hinckley, and it believes it can do that. But also it looks at all the other areas of social value as well. The key is that from Sizewell's perspective, but also from us as a chamber, is how we build this in a way to benefit Suffolk the most. And that is going to be about raising the standards and raising the opportunities for local people, be them young, be them old, be them from different backgrounds, be them from areas that really struggle normally to get into employment. We want to ensure that actually we have a beautiful part of the world that remains beautiful post-construction of Sizewell, but actually that is a much better place for our young people to grow up in and give us more opportunities so we can keep those people here. So there are so many different areas. And of course, these are the areas where we encourage, and most of our webinars have been based on, but we encourage businesses from across this region to really know that they can deliver. Because there will be some very large businesses work on this project who are not from Suffolk. They are not from Norfolk and the other counties. They will be from other parts of the UK. They will be from Europe. But they will come over and be expected to deliver social value. And that is where local firms can support them in doing that. So they really are key. And I encourage you to look back over the previous webinars and to reach out to our team if you need help in these areas. And of course, as always, we are there to support you getting access into Sizewell C. This isn't a Chamber of Commerce thing. This isn't a Suffolk thing. This is any business from across those 6 counties getting in touch with us via whatever route you need. And our team is there to support you, understand where you fit on this project, how we can help you, and to connect you to the right people. And there's some of the things that we will be doing. A lot of our work now the project has started will be very much focused on things like today, how to help you get ready for what is coming. So that when your opportunities come that are befitting of what you do as a business, that we can make sure that you are as in perfect position as you possibly can be, both to benefit you, but also to benefit the project, to speed up that process and to make sure that we have businesses that are in the right place at the right time. So ultimately, as we always say, reach out to us if you need our support, but also bear in mind, this is a very long project. This is a 12-year project that is going to take a lot of time for every part to really fully get itself in position to have local businesses working there. So be patient as always, but use this chance now to get ready. As we always say, we have this period now as work is beginning to help everyone have the chance to get ready, to get themselves in the right position, and to be there for when those tier 1 contractors and when the project needs you. So please do, as always, as we always say, reach out to us, let us know what you need, and we will make sure we deliver as much support as we can to get you as ready as we possibly can. So at this point, I will stop talking and I will hand you over to Jackie Mills, who will go through her slides. So Jackie.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please be gentle with me. This is my first webinar, so any nice comments would be welcome. As I said, my name is Jackie Mills. I'm the Workforce Mobilisation Manager for the Employee Affairs Unit for Sizewell C. Just to give you an overview of the Employment Affairs Unit, or the EAU as we're known, it's the part of Sizewell C that combines all aspects of project delivery that cover the management and deployment of personnel, and we drive effective mobilisation of workforces through our alliances and our contract partners. We act as a central point for governance on the project for people requirements and how they are managed. And it is really of great importance to us that the people and the skills that we engage with, they're an integral part of this project. And not only do they shape individual pathways and opportunities, but it determines the way in which we all contribute to a successful project, with safety, values and quality being some of the main drivers for our project to be successful. One of the main items that we do every day is we have a safety message at the start of every meeting. And today I've taken our safety message from Hinkley Point C. And just to give you a feel for the scale of what we're going to see in Suffolk, aligned with our DCO commitments, by the end of next year, it's envisaged to have 2,000 people on site a day. At Hinkley, they are 5 times that at present, and they're not at peak operation at the moment. So the daily safety message at Hinkley today is an incident update. And we use a system called Insight, where we record our observations, whether they be positive or of the negative nature, for incidents. And last week they saw 872 observations/incidents, and 282 of those were positive. There was one high potential event where a large section of plywood was dislodged during a lift, and it fell over 20 metres to the ground. Fortunately, nobody was injured and no property was damaged. However, looking out for ourselves and our colleagues in safety plays a large part in the better safe behaviours of our programme. and ensuring that we record, observe positive and negative behaviours on our insight system by all contractors and employees feeds into a larger, wider trending programme behind the scenes, all of which is aimed at improving the work environment and making it a safer place and better for us all. So that's just an idea of how many incidents they had at Hinckley last week. I'll just introduce the next slides, please, Ashley. So this webinar that we're doing now follows on from the webinar that was held on the 28th of March by our supply chain event with Tim Johnson. And these are the timelines that came from Tim's presentation, whereby it's determined that at the end of that webinar, you would have been awarded a contract if you were so lucky to have won that. And my aim today is to show you the pathway of what follows you winning that contract and how we can onboard you to the project. Next slide, please, Ashley. So this slide determines exactly our regulated areas of where we will be working. So you'll see Zone 1, that is the main platform where the MCA, which is our main construction area, that's where we will be building the reactors. Number 2 is where we have Sizewell A and Sizewell B at the moment. Zone 3 is the temporary construction area. All the equipment that is bought and materials into Sizewell will be laid down on that area and built before it enters into Zone 1 to be actually put together for the reactors. And Zone 4 is the ACA, which is the ancillary construction area, which will house the induction centre, occupational health, the project teams, and a park and ride facility that comes into the site for the project team. Number 5 is our offshore works area, where we'll see most of the marine and tunnelling, but that scope will be later in the programme. Next slide, please. So this slide, very high level, just shows some of our associated development sites. Sometimes they're called off-site infrastructure sites. And these will be put in place by the end of 2027, because before we start actually building the reactors in the main construction area, we have to actually build the infrastructure so that we can get all of the materials onto site, make sure we've got accommodation, make sure we've got park and rides, and that we're not affecting the local community by thousands of people coming in when we haven't built the infrastructure around that. So when you on board to the project or you are looking at scopes of work, it may well be that you're not actually inside the boundary line. It might be that you're in one of these associated development sites or off-site infrastructure sites, and you can see how far and wide that is spread at the moment just to get us up and going. Next slide, please. So this is a very high level overview of worker types on the project. And the reason worker types is important is because determined by supply chain on what kind of contract you've got, whether it's a specialist job, whether it's a task order or a purchase order, will depend on how you enter the project.
You don't want to. It's up to you.
So if you're fortunate enough, like myself, you become a Sizewell employee. For some of our alliance partners, you will be an embedded contractor, which basically means that is a substantive role within the organisation, and you would appear on our organisational chart. If you are a non-embedded contractor, that means that you're going to come in and do a specific piece of work for a specific amount of time, and that's determined by a purchase order and how duration with money. And 70% of our workforce coming in are going to be managed service workers. And that means that the companies like yourselves are going to come in as contract partners, and the personnel coming in to do the work are going to come in to do a scope of work. And once you've completed that work, then you can apply for some more work, or your staff can be upskilled to do other phases of work, but 70% of our workforce will be managed service workers. If you are an embedded contractor, an employee or non-embedded contractor, you may attract a TRP, which is a training profile role, and that's a formal record of competency assessed against the requirements of that role within the nuclear baseline, and that will be discussed with you by your line manager. Along with the worker category, there are prerequisites that are in place, and that is determined by location and worker role. And we manage every single contractor and worker that comes onto the project within our workforce information management system called WIMS. A contractor will be required to have a WIMS user so that they can be quite self-sufficient, which we'll supply training for. And to support that, we will make sure that we deliver the correct training with work instructions so that your workforce can be mobilised safely to the project. With the prerequisites in mind, you can then book an induction once that's done with a non-invasive DNA test that's completed at induction. And then once all that is completed, you can go and get your access control pass, and you must deliver your piece of identification that you submitted when you were requested to complete your vetting clearance forms. And after that, within 7 days of being on site, you will be required to do a site orientation and a contractor induction to make sure that we meet our license condition 9 requirement of mobilising you safely to site. So that's a very, very high level overview of the mobilisation procedure. Once you're on site, there will be supervisor inductions and driver inductions for those that it does relate to. Okay, next slide, please, Ashley. So for your workforce, once you're, as a contractor, you're awarded your contract, we will engage with you and we will deliver some training for WIMS, which is our system, which is at the bottom left of the slide there. And it's a basic record that you make in the system to determine who your worker is, where they've been, employment history, etc., etc. Every person that comes onto the project will be asked to be cleared to a BPSS standard, and that is for the ACA, the ancillary construction area, TCA, temporary construction area, and the MCA, the main construction area. If you're in one of the off-site infrastructure zones, you will not require vetting, but you will require all the other prerequisites that we require for site, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. The only item that the contractor would need to ensure that their workforce have prior to coming to site would be the HSE test or their CCNSG passport. It's a 45-minute test for the operatives test, and there is material online that you can study for, but it is basic health and safety for the construction workforce that everybody must undertake. Once we have issued you with the BPSS pack, the information within that is very, very important because that will determine how long it takes for somebody to receive their vetting clearance. If the information within that form is incorrect, that will delay the process. So We can have somebody cleared within 2 days, or it can take up to 2 weeks. It is just down to the quality of the information that the worker provides. We do apply for a DBS, which is the form on the right, the disclosure barring service. And this record is held, and it can advise us of any activity where people sometimes haven't been so fortunate and they fell on hard times and they got themselves into a little bit of trouble. Any convictions anybody's had that's over 4 years long. And just because you have a criminal record doesn't mean to say that you can't work on the Sizewell site. We do have lots of processes that go through. We have a panel that sits and reviews some of the cases, but we do have items that go through without a panel, and sometimes it's just a case of a caveat is applied. So for instance, if you had a drink driving offence and you were banned for a year, that would come into us and we would see that within our central vetting team, and they would apply potentially 2 caveats per year for the first year of employment. So you'd have a random DNA test at 2 periods during that first year of employment. If you have any higher misdemeanors than that, again, it still doesn't mean that you can't work on the project. The panel is made up of HR, IR, operations staff, and high-level senior managers, and every case is reviewed unbiasedly so that we can give everybody the opportunity to get back into the workplace and give back to the community. Once you've completed your vetting clearance, my team with the EAU, we will identify an onboarding or HR team member within your organisation. We will deliver some WIMS training to them. We will give them access to the system, and we will connect them to the site vetting team so that they can cover anything that you're unsure of. Once you've got over 6 employees, we do ask you to engage with a screening service company, which acts as your own company that you engage with. So you become self-sufficient, so you're not relying on Sizewell to complete all of your worker profiles for you. On the right-hand side, the prerequisites, 99% of the time, all these are completed before you come to induction. So by the time you come to induction, you just have to complete your drug and alcohol test and your site induction. And then once everything is confirmed, you can go and get your access control pass. And then you can go to work straight away. Just a note on the prereqs for the HSE test. There are 2 sorts of tests. There's the operatives test, which will be applied to 90% of the workforce. The other 10% will be the managers and professionals, which is if you're of a senior nature, you would need to take the higher level test on that. Next slide, please. To support our managed service workers, which most of the contractors and the contract partners will be with their workforce, we do have the competency and qualifications matrix, which sits within WIMS. So if you add a worker role, for instance, if you look at line 262, general storeman, painting, insulation for coatings, it will give you the minimum qualification that we require to meet that. This matrix replicates Hinkley Point C. So if any company's worked at Hinkley Point C and you've been a geologist engineer over there, exactly the same comps and quals will apply when you come over to Sizewell, sorry. And what we want to try and do with that is have continuity of employment so that we are taking the very best of the skills to come over to Sizewell to make sure that we can build the power station and replicate what they've done at Hinkley in a more efficient manner. Within the matrix, it is the contractor's responsibility to make sure that their workforce is SQEP, so suitably qualified, experienced personnel, and they are compliant and they upload the evidence at the onboarding process within the system, so that when we do go into a compliance check, we can see everything that's in there. And our comps and quals are aligned with our industry standards. Next slide, please. And I just put this end slide in here so that we do have a lot of employees that, especially at Hinckley, that started off as a contractor and a managed service worker. But as they've come through the ranks and they've grown with the project, they have actually then obtained roles as an embedded contractor or an employee. And this just shows the path of the first year of being an employer or embedded contractor, from making sure that we continually give you training along the way, how we deliver our zero harm, and as a leader, the life-saving rules and why is nuclear special, and delivering that to your teams, making sure that you complete all the mandatory training that's required, and one-to-ones every week with your line manager, so that we can improve and make sure that we have a workforce working with us and on the project that meets the standards that we require. And we do hold culture sessions, and we have, especially for those workers who don't have to visit site, we make sure that everybody has a site visit during the first 12 months so that they can see the scale of what we're trying to achieve here. And after a year, we have a nice celebration to mark that occasion. So that is really a whistle-stop tour of onboarding. And I know there'll be lots and lots of questions, so I will hand back to Ashley for now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, there's a few questions because we've got a lot of bits and pieces on here from some of the businesses that particularly our team has been talking to, but also just to thank you for all the chat. We don't always ask for loads of stuff in the chat box when we do these webinars. I think I'm about to in the future, because first thing I'll say is it's amazing to see so many people already working on site. We spend a lot of our time making people know that this is a real opportunity. It's not going to be real for everyone, and not everyone's going to win work on this project. It's that's an impossibility, but actually there is a real opportunity for local businesses to play a part on this. And I've lost count of the amount that have put on chat, already supplying a site, supplying people, supplying goods, supplying services, working on site. It's fantastic to see. And we're working very hard with Sizewell at the minute about how we capture this and how we capture all of this positive that's already happening. The project's not really, let's be honest, it's not properly started, but to see so many on already is fantastic. So thank you. It's also nice to see so many new names. There's a lot of businesses that either I've personally not met, or maybe I'm going to guess some of them are not signed up to our portal that are local and regional, and I'll touch on our portal a bit later, but it's good to see so many new names appearing on there as well. I'll quickly point out, Jackie on her earlier slides referred to something Tim Johnson, who's one of the commercial leads on the project, referred to around the whole process that the project goes through for tendering, etc. If you weren't able to be at either the in-person event we did on the 28th of March in Stoke-on-Avon, or a couple of weeks later the virtual one, again, another plug for our webinars. We did mid-April, we did our Engage, Update and Inform webinar, and that was that same message that we delivered in person at the end of March. So you've got a real overview of where the project is at, but particularly looking at the way in which they will go to market. So that's well worth looking onto again. Also, what was quite nice to see in the chat box is there's already a lot of you working on the standards that you're trying to achieve. Some of you mentioned ISOs, some of you mentioned cybersecurity. Again, one of the the webinars we did, I think early this year, February maybe, around these sorts of things that are going to be vitally important. There are a lot of things, take ISOs for example, you might not need. They might not be something that you have to have, but by having them, you help that confidence that someone like Sizewell is going to know, well, obviously they are evidencing their standards, because then the audits that they will do will be based on seeing, are you putting into practice these ISOs that you've managed to achieve? Whereas if you don't have them, then it's a whole process that you have to go through, which can be a little bit more laborious. So fantastic, and well done to so many of you on there. Couple of questions. I'll do the ones that are in the Q&A box first. Right, there we go.
Sorry, actually, I answered a couple of them.
Oh, so. You've been answered as well. I was going to say, I wonder where a couple of them have gone. So fantastic.
They're in answered. So
yeah, no, but I've got them there. So, well, you've seen them on them, but I'll just read them out just in case for anyone. So I wanted to ask where the accommodation campus was going to be, based on the zones that you saw earlier. Thank you for not including 5. Although at one point we even did suggest maybe a Fred Olsen cruise liner moored in the North Sea somewhere could be an option for housing people. But that's going to be in zone 3. What's classed, if you're on the project, as the TCA, so the temporary construction area, which is the largest area that's just been cleared if you're used to driving around that area, around near Leiston and Sizewell. And the other one was to do with the health and safety training as part of the CSCS. And as Jackie's put on there, the project can utilise CSCS until they expire. However, they are now not covering some roles. So when expiry is nearing, please check the website to see if that role is covered. If not, then please take the CITB HSE test. And they will very soon have testing facilities on site for that. So thank you for that, Jackie. A couple of the questions that are on there. Do we have a timeline for FID sign off? And when this will really start seriously? Right, the short answer to the first part of that is no. The language from the project is still the same. There will be a final investment decision reached in this Parliament. I know that conversations are continuing, because I speak regularly to the team in Leiston that run the Sizewell C office, and they have been very, very busy with investor meetings recently. So at some point soon, when will this start seriously? I mean, it depends on what you class as seriously. I mean, if you look now at the amount of work on site, let alone the amount of businesses now working on site, which is fantastic, like I say, there's huge amounts already happening. Earthworks start this month. Or have started, I should say. So, okay, only small stuff in comparison to what they're going to be digging. But I've used this example a few times recently. Framatome, that are the nuclear OEM for the reactors, they are obviously, they've built units 1 and 2 that are over in Hinkley Point C, and obviously many of you have seen the videos of some of the bits and pieces arriving, the reactor pressure vessel, I think towards the end of last year. Units 3 and 4, as they call them, so Sizewell's 2 units, are already in production. Some of the casing is already a long way to complete for Unit 3. So when will we see huge amounts of work on site? Well, I think Jackie kind of referred to it earlier, but on site now there's 500, 600 people on site. By the end of this year, they want that to be 1,500, 2,000. So I think we will start to see that ramp up now, and more activity happening. By the end of this year, the hope is that the park and ride start construction, so you'll start to see more stuff happen off-site. There will be some work underway at some point in the near future on Orwell Logistics Park, which is where the project is going to base its logistics hub towards the south. So therefore, there's 2 large warehouses obviously already built there for those who are used to driving along the A14 and see that. And the 3rd unit will be built relatively soon. And then some work's got to be undertaken there to make that fit for purpose for Sizewell. But that will begin work. And again, so you'll start to see more and more stuff happen off-site, as well as the increase on site. And again, if you're used to driving along Lovers Lane or I think King Edward Avenue, you will have seen the large 300 desk accommodation office unit being built on what is classed as the ACA. So that's the land next to Eastlands Industrial Site, and that's where the likes of Jackie and her team will eventually be based, to be able to do all the induction, things like training will be there, but also for Sizewell workers to work. So it is now beginning to happen at pace. It does take a long time, these projects. It will be a slow gradual but very consistent, relentless ramp up now. But to the first point, if I had the answer on FID, I'd happily give it. But we are still waiting ourselves for that clarity. But stuff's happened time. I mean, only today, if you haven't seen, the Office for Nuclear Regulation have announced today the site license permissions. So that's literally, what, 3 hours ago, I think that went live. So even the ONR now are signing off Sizewell. Yeah, Sizewell C, you're ready to go. You've done everything we wanted. So the national regulator for the nuclear industry is now happy as well. So I will answer those live and do those. So a couple of other questions I've got on here before I check over the chat function again. Jackie, you mentioned obviously about the HS&E test or the CCNSG test. Is that something that is worth businesses who want to work on the project doing that in advance?
Yes, so if anybody has a CSCS or a CCNSG card, they are valid. They are valid, and we accept those as a replacement for the CITB HSE test, and we can utilise that to the expiry. At that point, it would be down to the individual companies to determine whether the CSCS role is still covered under the CSCS card, or they take the CITB HSE. Our preference would be the CITB HSE because we will have the testing functionality on site, and therefore our contract partners won't be losing a day of their workforce going to take the test, because they can nip into the test centre, do that in 45 minutes and then be back on site again. And that's the advantage of what we're doing there.
Fantastic. And Jackie, there was one kind of question lost in the chat when everyone was typing lots of stuff out, and I think I know what the answer is going to be, but we get asked this an awful lot. So maybe coming from you, it'll probably have a bit more gravitas than when we say it. But is there the ability for companies to get passes that enable them to get on site to talk to other contractors so they can help business development?
So in respect of agencies, or just in respect of other contractors, Ashley? How do you mean?
Other contractors. So this is a business that's already supplying one or two businesses on site.
Yes.
Obviously would love to supply the same product to others, especially while we're in this slight flux on the project with regards to processing everything starting. So is it possible for them to be able to get passes to access the site so they can have a chat to others?
We don't encourage activity like that on site because everything is done through the tender process. However, once you are recognised on site as a tier 1 contractor and you are utilising the workforce, it does stand you in a better stead to then be able to apply for additional works and then take on your own subcontractors, which you will manage through your own account. Because obviously we recognise you, you're all set up, you've got your onboarding team in place, and actually, you know, we would turn to those contractors in the initial phases to get set up, but in the background, you know, we're going to need more than 20, 30, 40 contractors. I think at Hinkley, tier 1 contractors at the moment stands at 250, and underneath that are thousands of subcontractors from across the UK that support those tier 1, the main contract partners.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the stat. It's gone out of my head now, which is really annoying. I think there was a stat that came out of the Hinkley socio-economic report from a few weeks ago that said how many businesses are in total have been on the supply chain at Hinkley, and I'm sure it was over 4,000. Sure, it was something like that. It was a big number because you've got businesses all over the country. Some directly on site, some indirectly, but so many businesses have been involved in this project. And I think at any given time, I know when we did an event towards the end of last year with the site operations team, I think at that point there was about 21,000 people in the UK had gone through and had current vetting or site pass for Hinkley. Over 20,000 people had a pass. I mean, that's just immense numbers because of the amount of people that will visit and do things and stuff. So it's huge. And I understand why that question was asked. The key is, and again, this is one of the good things of going second after Hinkley. You know, we talk a lot about intelligent replication, and, you know, replicating the design and fundamentally all the lessons that they've learned from Hinkley is key to this project being cheaper and faster. and to help that fleet mentality of building other ones. But also it helps them learn where they can be much more efficient. And one of those ways is that the client itself, Sizewell, all the alliances want to control a lot more about what is happening. So in certain parts of the project down at Hinckley, it was left all to contractors to do, which then did mean sometimes actually you had multiple suppliers turning up on site, all doing the same thing but working for different tier ones. And what the project's trying to do this time is bring that together much more, whether that's to do with supplies. I know recently we've been talking a lot to the PPE suppliers, the waste suppliers, the recruitment companies, even some of the training companies. It's the project wants to align everything much better, because then you get less people needing to go to site. You can be much more efficient with what you're doing, much more consistent standards across the people that are on site, both workers, but also the supply chain more broadly. And as many of you will know, if you're a Suffolk-based business, this project has to limit the amount of transport going to site. It has finite numbers that it cannot go over. So actually, much more efficient approach to this. Right businesses, right location. Yes, everyone wants to get on site, but actually more of the operation at Sizewell will happen away from Sizewell than it does at Hinckley, happening at Hinckley. So actually, it might not be that the best place for you is to get access to site. It could well be that it's Orwell Logistics, Lowestoft, Ipswich, whoever. Obviously, even down in the southwest, because they will be leveraging some of the infrastructure that was built at Hinckley to run Sizewell as well. So, but that's where we will help you. As Jackie said, it has to go through a tender process, but all opportunities, and I'll talk more about Portal soon, but all opportunities, we will be that route in to help you understand where you fit and how you can try and fit in there. There's a couple of questions on here. So before I go on to my page, I visited Hinckley last week for context and was gobsmacked by the scale, just enormous. However, when looking at the timeline photos, it really looked like 4 to 5 years into the program before the worker numbers increased. Do you have a graphic that shows the project plan with worker numbers? Yes. So not on this slide deck, but you can see from our previous presentations, including, I think, the one we did last week for the accommodation management service. But again, if you have a little look back on our website, you'll see other presentations we've done and our other webinars where it does show the scale of the increase in worker numbers. Rough rule of thumb, like I say, it could be somewhere in the region of 2,000 by the end of this year. And then you can kind of anticipate probably something in the region of 1,200, 1,500 extra every single year until they reach peak. Now, peak is around 8,000, and that is expected somewhere around 2028, I think, this is all based on the development consent order. So it gives you an idea for what that scale up is going to be. So what we're experiencing now is a lot of people on site. What we're about to experience is huge amounts of people working on site. But as mentioned earlier, actually a lot of people working off site as well. But certainly, give it a look, or if not, please drop me an email and I can send you that slide through. Not an issue at all. And I should have said earlier, obviously, we also, in addition to posting the webinar on the website, we will share everyone that's registered today the copy of the slides. So again, if when I send it to you, you want that graphic shared, then of course we will do. So that one is answered. How do we get access to the work-winning webinar you mentioned earlier? So like I say, all of our webinars, if you go onto our website, which currently it's all based on sizewellcsupplychain.co.uk, you can go onto the support page and you'll see our business readiness program, which has all of the webinars. And so you'll see some of the more recent webinars on there. They're all hosted via YouTube, so you can find them on YouTube as well. And then they'll also be soon on CompeteFor, and I'll touch on CompeteFor a little later. We're a supplier of equipment to the tier 1 and subcontractors on site. What will our drivers, fitters, and technical support guys need in the way of passes to gain access to the site? Will this be the full onboarding process? Jackie.
So, Steve, I was desperately trying to look to see what company you were from so that I could try and answer you a bit in a bit more detail. But there are 2 kinds of drivers that we have, delivery drivers, for want of a better word. We have our UOR, which are our urgent operational requirements, which are our fitters, and any kind of maintenance breakdown support that we need. And they are booked by our visitor management system, and they come in with an escort and they go and fix what they need to fix, and then they come off site again, but they always have an escort with them. If you are going to be full-time on the site and you are going to be delivering every day for the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, we would expect you to go through the full onboarding process. We are just reviewing the driver induction process with our logistics team to see how we can work that, because we do have a commitment to make sure that everybody is inducted by their contracting company. But in addition to that, we are going to be issuing an electronic driver induction. And the plan would be, once they're set up, that as you get to the gate, there will be a booth that you can do the induction when you arrive, so that we're not holding up any logistics. So if you haven't done it, there will be a driver induction that will be delivered by a booth. But like I say, if you're going to be full-time on site, then we would expect you to be fully onboarded with your own pass for unescorted access.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jackie. Are all the Sizewell C opportunities published to compete for, or can tier one contract suppliers their own procurement systems? Okay, so it's both, to be fair, at the moment. The aim of the project is that everything will go through CompeteFor down to a certain value. Now, what will happen is that, as you will have currently seen, the client, so Sizewell C themselves, are doing pretty much all of the procurement, and it is going on to CompeteFor in parts, in dribs and drabs. Like I said, because this project is only just getting started. And what will happen is, once they have appointed their tier ones, principal contractors, whatever it is for individual packages of work, where appropriate, they will also have to use CompeteFor. And potentially even, depending on, again, the value of work, the tier twos will also be expected to use CompeteFor. Now, there will be certain parts that will be self-awarded. There will be some things that will be through existing procurement systems, especially if the value is lower. Now, bear in mind, we're talking a mammoth project. So what Sizewell class as lower value and what you or I in the real world class as lower value is probably two very different things. But even those opportunities that are not through CompeteFor, those tier one contractors will still be working with us. So our role, as we move forward, is to work with, whether it's the client, whether it's the tier one contractor or the tier two contractor, to identify those areas in which they deliver social value, hence the local angle being on there. Because if Sizewell decide to award a £20 million contract to a contractor who is not local, but for the right reasons, they are the right contractor based on experience from Hinckley, or certain credentials that they have to have, certain specialisms, they will have to, as part of that process, evidence what they're going to do locally. So even if they've got their own procurement systems and their own standards and everything set in place, they will still have to work with us to help identify how they strengthen that local and regional supply chain. Be that adding local options where they currently don't have local options, or adding more local options to ensure that as companies, they don't drop the ball on other projects. Because what we can't have, us as a chamber when it comes to Suffolk, but actually more UK PLC full stop. So you can't have everyone focusing on Sizewell when you're trying to finish Hinckley. You're trying to do what you're trying to do on HS2. Not long before we start in this area, Lower Thames Crossing, and all these other big projects. So it's about additionality, not about everything being Sizewell. Now, the whole CompeteFor thing will grow over time. This is a project that is just starting. It's still resourcing up. So at the moment, there is certain things, because the project has just kicked off, where they do have to use existing framework providers, even within Sizewell. But the aim is to increase, and they already are, if you notice, but increase the amount of opportunities that are going on to CompeteFor. And very soon it will become the standard that every week there'll be ample opportunities going on there at all different levels. But again, that's where we come in, helping to help you identify who you need to be talking to, when you need to be talking to people. And the aim also is then, through CompeteFor, to publish timelines of when this work's going to happen. So it's also not just then about finding out when it is live, it's actually knowing in advance, in the autumn, it's likely that these opportunities are coming. Fantastic, let's gear ourselves up and let's get ready. So I'll get rid of that one. Before I go on to any other questions, Nigel, I saw, has put in the chat, any news on the PPE tender? No, Nigel. At some point very soon, It is one of the areas where we've held one of our in-person events, and it was fantastic to see local suppliers turn up in their droves for that one. But no, we are still waiting for it. That will be on CompeteFor relatively soon as well, because it is key. But that's a great example, you know, down at Hinckley. In the early days, it was very much left to the tier one contractors for PPE, which did mean you've got different levels of standards. You had increased wastage because you had over ordering and duplications. The project has learned, and actually to get a centralized service for this, utilizing as many local firms as we can get involved, to ensure that you're delivering much more efficient service, much better sustainability wise and for the environment, but actually just going to cost the project less as well, which is obviously a good thing when you consider the government is the major shareholder in this project. Obviously, as taxpayers, we want it to be efficient and on budget, don't we? So vitally important. Jackie, a couple of other questions that are on here. Certainly one that we kind of talk to businesses the most about. What's the most common error made by businesses when they're getting ready for induction, and kind of the biggest assumptions they make?
So the biggest assumption we have is that people just have to attend the induction and just listen to it, and then they can go and get a pass. And that isn't the case. We do have the commitment for inductions. For myself, I'm the owner of License Condition 9, which is the safe instructions of personnel to site. And that involves the vetting clearance, the prerequisites, including the code of conduct and making sure our workforce questionnaire and people sit the induction, and the drug and alcohol test is taken, so that we know when they get to site, they've been informed about everything that could and will happen on site with regards to emergency arrangements, quality, our values, what we expect of the workforce with regards to behaviours and respect. And you know, the induction is not just a vehicle to get your site pass. It is there for a reason, and it is to keep everybody safe and make sure that we are delivering a quality product. And I see there was a question in the chat there. When will the inductions start? Well, the inductions have started. We started about a year ago. That's what my job was to do before we got granted the site license. And in a rolling year, we've done 1,876 inductions. So you can see how much work we've done. And that can be small scopes of work, large scopes of work, and the skill set needed to clear the ground to make sure that we are ready and getting ready for the earthworks to come along with the Marsh Harrier moving, the lake, and putting the fence up. There is just so much involved. When I joined the project, I kind of underestimated how big it was. And then when you go to Hinckley, like somebody said, it is overawing to see what we're trying to do at Sizewell. So yeah,
it is massive. And anyone who saw how deep it was at Hinckley, you know, we go deeper in Suffolk as well. So it's massive. It really is. What was one of the other questions on here? Actually, just quickly on Jackie's point there, kind of it's not a tick box. You know, throughout this project, one of the things we say to businesses who are looking at the standards, for example, whether it's health and safety or compliance or ISOs or whatever it is, it's not just having a policy that someone created in 2016, copied off Google, etc., etc. It is that it is part of the culture of the business, and it is evidenced, and that it is practiced, and that it is monitored, and it is reported on, and it is addressed. So everything about, you know, evidencing what you do, monitoring it, showing that it has ownership from the top down, and that it's not just left to one person to do any of these things is so important on this project. Whether you're talking to do with inductions and safety, or like I say, everything through compliance and bid writing and everything, it's about a multiple approach to this. There was another question. How about the timing of the tier one hospitality, catering, hotel services tender? So don't know yet on catering. Obviously, it's currently through an interim service. I think the aim is later this year to start that process for the long-term full-time catering provision. Facilities management will likely go to market before catering. Again, it's currently on an interim service. So we're hoping probably some point this summer we may see the facilities management one come up. There won't be a hotel services tender like there is down at Hinkley Point C. On Sizewell, it will be managed across the FM and the catering provider. So again, just looking at the provision that was delivered down at Hinkley and working out, well, do you need that? Can it be more efficiently delivered? So how the accommodation campus will be delivered on a service base is still to be fully identified. The project is going through that process at the moment, but it will be delivered through a mixture of the FM and the catering providers, working alongside the waste and so on and so forth. Just make sure in the chat, was there any, there's no questions in there. Jackie, actually, on the subject, things like the accommodation campus, I appreciate that's on site, but the other remote sites, so like the park and rides, for example, freight management facility, how much of the induction and security will matter at those locations? I know you said kind of not vetting, but everything else, but is the process other than that exactly the same?
So yes, the process is exactly the same apart from the vetting. So the only zones you need vetting for are the main construction area, the temporary construction area, and the ancillary construction area. And eventually the marine and tunnelling area will also be covered. But for the associated development sites like the park and ride, Orwell, obviously it's on the news about the Pontins accommodation campus or the holiday park at Pakefield. That is all off-site infrastructure. So you would need to meet all of the prereqs, sit the induction and have the DNA test, so that we can mobilise you to those sites so that everybody has the same level of understanding of what the project is about. Because even though you're not on site, you are on a Sizewell site where we are the principal contractor in some cases, and you are the face of Sizewell. So for instance, when we were just completing the works on the B1122, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that road from Yoxford that goes all the way into site up to Lovers Lane. We had our contractors deliver that piece of work, and a very high grade piece of work. And the feedback we have is it's like a runway. It's a fantastic road, and why can't the rest of Suffolk have roads like this, etc., etc. And all of those teams went through the induction, and the reason is because they are customer facing, they meet drivers, they do get abused, the traffic marshals by drivers because of the diversions, but they're all aware that, you know, their behaviours, because they're working on behalf of Sizewell C, do matter. And the one thing I would say to all contract partners is, even if you've got a piece of work on an off-site infrastructure, which can be work worth millions of pounds, in the background, to complete the vetting process for your staff and your workforce to enable you to work on site in the later phases, I would really encourage that of you, because it's not just a case of what you're doing now, it's what you can do in the next 12 years. And with the upskilling programs we've got, just because some of your workforce aren't that skilled workforce now, doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't assist in training them to do a higher skilled job.
Oh, fantastic. That's very true, and certainly very true of businesses. I speak to a number of businesses in the Southwest that have grown fantastically off the back of Hinkley, and it's exactly that. They did a little bit of bread and butter stuff in the early days, and that just grew and grew, and they were able to pick up other pockets of work and do other things, which just meant that business could grow, employ people, establish new facilities, etc. So really quite an exciting opportunity in that regard. Don't think there's any other questions come through. I'm glad you answered about Pontins, because I was going to actually ask that, because obviously that's quite fresh information. And just one final one on here, Jackie. Who's responsible if we've got, because a lot of the businesses on the call today will be small businesses, so they are not going to be bidding direct for the project. They're going to be waiting for those other little opportunities further down the supply chain. Whose responsibility is it to inform that smaller business of what's expected of them?
So they would come in as what we call a tier 2 contractor in through the tier 1. So a tier 1 who holds the contract will be responsible for making sure that their subcontractors meet their company's requirements, their employing company's terms. But in addition to that, they do still have to meet our level of expectation, which is what we would deliver at the induction. But they would still have the same requirements that would be delivered through the tier one, who would then communicate that down to them.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, there's no other questions I've got on here. There's no other questions on the chat or Q&A. If anything does pop back through, we will grab it. But what I'll do now is I'll take this an opportunity just to do the last couple of slides, and because especially one or two of them refer to some of the points made. So just as a quick reminder, so CompeteFor got mentioned. So CompeteFor, so there's two websites for those of you not aware. So we have, for the last number of years, run Sizewell C Supply Chain.co.uk. That has been the place for all information about the project, the events we do, information about grants and funding and support, and all the bits and pieces that we could attempt to collaborate together to get ready for you. The project itself then set up CompeteFor about just over 18 months ago, with a view that that is where all opportunities on this project will be posted as that first step on the tender process. So very much as an expression of interest stage before you go into more formal PQQ, invitation to tender, and obviously beyond. Now, what we are now working with Sizewell, and obviously we help to run a little bit of CompeteFor, but what we are now working with is to soon bring the two together so that all information will be on CompeteFor. So that there'll be one central location for everything. So as a reminder, as we always like to do, but it is so important, all businesses just sign up for CompeteFor. Now, CompeteFor is there for all, or sorry, I shouldn't say all, a large number of national large-scale projects. HS2, Heathrow, and others are all on there at the moment. But the whole design for Sizewell is to make procurement on this project as transparent and as easy for everyone to access as possible. And it won't just be about procurement, it'll be about opportunities for meetings and events as well. So there will be huge amounts of activity increasingly happening on the CompeteFor website. And as you'll see with some of the headings that are on there, we'll also put all of our support-based work, like these webinars and others, onto that platform, and increasingly be able to support you through that process. It's currently undergoing another facelift at the moment, so it will look very different soon. But actually, you will have seen in the last couple of weeks 3 or 4 more opportunities going on there. Everything from dredging in the North Sea to EV chargers. And we're about to have a EV car share scheme go on there. So there's all manner of things will go onto this platform that will give that opportunity for you. On CompeteFor itself, it does also have guides, and obviously when you get these slides, you'll be able to click those guides, but there'll be guides on there for you to be able to understand how to best use them and set up your profile. But it is vitally important businesses get yourself registered onto CompeteFor to keep an eye on the opportunities that are coming and will increasingly come over time. And just as a quick plug, obviously you've got today's webinar. We have more coming up. So we've got another one on Thursday of this week, which is the project very much talking through how they are approaching the skills need of Sizewell. And importantly, and to their credit, not in isolation. What we are pleased as a chamber is that Sizewell are not just saying, we need 100 of this skill set, so we're going to train 100. What they're looking at is, well, what do we need? But what do all the other projects need in the region? And hey, Suffolk County Council, what else do you need? And really trying to look at what is the best approach to building the right skills that Sizewell need, but actually that doesn't then stop all of the other things being built in this region at the same time. And some of that, may end up being legacy skills that we keep well beyond Sizewell. So we got the head of skills for Sizewell speaking at that one on Thursday. Still plenty of time to sign up if you want to. And then later on this month, we've got a dual webinar with the Nuclear Skills Academy Network. I think that's NSAN anyway, looking at their nuclear skills program, and also West Suffolk College looking at their energy readiness program. Both are either part or have part and fully funded schemes available for businesses who want to get into the energy sector, or specifically the nuclear sector, again, to understand some of the things that are required and some of the standards you're going to have to adhere to. So really good sessions coming up, and we've got 1 or 2 more already planned later this summer. All of these are on the website and you can sign up for now, and keep an eye because we will constantly be adding more as much as we can. And as mentioned earlier, if there's other areas where you would like to see us attempt to deliver some support for you, let us know. And if it makes sense for us to do a webinar on certain subject matter, then we will look to do it for sure. There is another thing in the chat. Someone else just given us a highlight, which is, again, it's great to see there are so many businesses close by that want to be involved in this project. So as I say, the key, get signed up. We can only do our job if you're signed up to the portal, so that therefore we can then keep you informed of what's going on. It will get bigger and bigger and bigger, this project. It will get more and more difficult for us to remember individual conversation with businesses that we've had over the years. But where we can, we will. And our team is always keen to meet as many businesses as possible. But now, with the opportunities coming forward, our work is going to be much more based on specific events for specific sectors. And we have got a couple coming up very, very soon, particularly looking at some of the nearshore work and the jetties that are going to be built out into the North Sea, and also starting the work, the very early work with the MEH phase, so the second half of the project. I know that sounds like some years away yet, but actually some of that work needs to start now in introducing and bringing in. So these opportunities will come thicker and faster as we move forward. Another question just on there. Hopefully, I will be there tomorrow, but the team is. So anyone that is heading to ABE tomorrow at Trinity Park in Ipswich, you will have Ian and Julia from our team there tomorrow. So please do pop and say hello to them alongside the other members of the chamber team. If I can, I will be. I'm hoping to be doing some interviews tomorrow because we're currently recruiting. So I may see you tomorrow, anonymous attendee. But if not, the rest of the team will certainly be there for you to go and talk to and have a chat with. And they're always happy to have a conversation. Do you have a schedule or timetable of projects you anticipate advertising and compete for? So, Michael, that's what we're working with the project at the moment. Everyone wants to be able to publish something. Of course, the biggest problem you're going to have is as soon as you publish something, it's outdated. But what we are working with the project at the moment is how we can produce a document that gives the local and regional supply chain the heads up you need. So it might not tell you that the opportunity, if I use Nigel's example earlier, for PPE is going to be the 10th of May. It might say Q2, it might say autumn, whatever it is. But at least it gives you an idea as a business, right, what am I looking at? Where's the opportunities that are most relevant to me? And again, it's because most of the opportunities won't be directly you. As a business, most local businesses will not actually be bidding ever on CompeteFor for something. You'll be bidding that level below or the level below that to work for someone else who will supply the project. So by you understanding, right, it's going to go to market in October, it's going to be awarded in April 25, that means I need to start that process in spring next year. You at least can start to understand then, right, what do I do as a business? When do I start to get ready and focus my energy on Sizewell? Or do I, for the next year, just carry on bumbling along with other stuff, and then I can worry about Sizewell next year? So we're very much trying to work with the projects just how we do this. And our aim is to at least get a 6-month look forward, but more if we can, to be able to help businesses plan and prepare and understand what's happening. And everyone seems to agree that's the right thing to do. It's just how you do it in the best way possible, because things move. The earthworks were not meant to start as quickly as they have done, and other things were planned but have had to be pushed back because different priorities sometimes come in. Couple of other ones there. People saying thank you, which is always very good. So thank you very much. So if there is no other questions, I will bring this session to an end. Like I say, by the end of this week at the very latest, hopefully sooner, we will send out a copy of the slides from today to everyone who is registered. So those of you who attended and those who sadly couldn't attend. That'll also include a link to the recording. But also then via our website, you'll be able to access the recording of this webinar and all the others that we have done, and also other content and support and things that you may need. Obviously, always email the team. We are more than happy to help you as much as we can. Sometimes there is no news, and we'll tell you if there is no news. Trust me when I say we don't hide anything from you all. If we could tell you some of this stuff, we'd love to. If I could tell you when FID was happening, or when the opportunity for those who want to do certain things is happening, of course I would. But just stay in touch with the team and we will be there for you. But yes, I will leave that at that point. Thank you very much for attending and hope you all have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.